Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for attending today. Today we're going to get into everything that's going on with the Apache Superset 3.0 release. So looking forward to telling you all about it. I wanted to introduce the panel today. I'm Evan Rusakis. I work with Preset, and we also have Michael Molina and John Bodley from Airbnb, as well as Danielle Gaspar from Preset. And all of us work on Superset and our PMC project management committee members. So if you have any questions about Apache process, we're all able to answer those. And what we're getting into today is everything 3.0. So it's worth mentioning that Apache Superset 2.0 came out in July of 2022. So it's been a little bit over a year. And 2.1.1, which is a patch release for the long-term supported version of Superset, just came out a couple of days ago. So this represents a new major version, a new bunch of changes we'll get into, and also represents a lot of growth in the community. In fact, the community has grown. If you use Slack as a measurement, we've grown by about 50% since 2.0 came out. And there's nearly 12,000 folks on Slack today. So thank you all for being a big part of this big release. And there's a lot in it. We're going to cover as much as we can, but just kind of hitting the highlights. If you want to interact with any of us and ask questions and so forth, there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is by joining the Superset Slack workspace, which I'll drop the link to in the chat. And the other, which we're going to do a little bit differently today than we usually do, is allow Q&A not by Zoom, but rather we're going to use Slido, if any of you have used that before. Here's the link. I'm dropping that in the chat as well, or you can snag the QR code or just type the link if you're going old school. And we'll be trying to keep an eye on those questions as we proceed through this. And panelists, please stop me if we need to discuss any of those. So talking about what's generally in this release in the broadest of strokes, there's a lot of stuff that's been deprecated and removed because this is kind of a reset release. And we'll talk about what that really means. But there's also, of course, new features that come along because this is a new cut from the master branch of the repository and a ton of bug fixes and a whole bunch of migrations that support all of these features and fixes and deprecations and removals going forward. So we'll go through that whole list. And what a major release really is, following semantic versioning or SEMVer, is a chance to make breaking changes or remove legacy things, legacy code, stuff like that. So we created a new process to gather consensus via Apache means by using a GitHub project. It was basically a giant Kanban board where people could submit requests for breaking changes that would make it into 3.0. And then we sent those as batches to the Apache mailing list for official consensus. And then those changes, according to the proper timeline, started making their way into the getting merged into master during what we were calling a breaking change window. We've learned a lot through this process. We think it went a lot smoother than 2.0, but there's a lot of things we think we can do to continue to smooth out and improve and speed up this process. So we're going to be continuing to iterate on this as we start to think about what 4.0 is. And we'll go into all the nuts and bolts of how this process did work and could work in a future blog post and kind of solidifying that on the Superset wiki going forward. So how big is 3.0? Let's just talk about it in sense of numbers. There were 39 database migrations for 301 fixes. There were 377 features and 305 other things that just kind of didn't get lumped into any of those prior categories. Long story short, it's a lot of stuff. We won't be able to cover it all today, but we're going to try to get into what we can. And these are the fine folks that have contributed the most PRs that have made it into this release. So thank you to all of you in particular. I know a number counting PRs is not the best measurement of like engineering work or anything like that, but it's the best we've got at hand. So thanks for contributing. And I mean, the top two people are on this panel, so we've got the right folks here today. That's exciting. So let's get into some of the breaking changes. These are the things that will likely affect you when you upgrade from any prior version of Superset, whether it's 1.5 or 2.0, things you'll want to know. The first are some security updates. So Danielle, I'll just go ahead and hand you the mic to give us a little update there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so 2.1.1 came out 2 days ago, and 3.0 that we are talking about brings some important security fixes also. It's really important to update. We are planning to increase our cadence on patch updates going forward, so reported security fixes around a patch will get out more quickly. We have seen, and that's really important, to increase interest by some really important and very talented cybersecurity companies reporting fixes that they find with really thorough scanning and testing of Superset. That is really valuable. We are planning also to enlarge our community security team going forward and to better handle and the necessary fixes. And we are also continuing to ensure that Apache Superset is secure by default at all times, and we have improved our continuous integration pipeline also to catch any possible or probable security problems as soon as possible. So yeah, continuing on that.
Thank you very much. And also, I don't have the link handy if somebody else wants to dig it up and share it, but we have a blog post that we published pretty recently about how this whole Apache security process works with the Superset project, if you'd like to know more. All right. So deprecation time. We've had a lot of APIs in Superset for a long time, and a lot of them have been deprecated in prior phases, so whether it's 2.x, I should say, or prior versions to that even. So it was time for some cleanup in 3.0. All of these ones are being removed. We're not going to talk through these, but you can grab a screenshot, check the changelog, or we'll write a full blog post about this later. Then let's see, why is it not progressing? There it goes. Okay, so these ones are APIs that have been newly deprecated. And what that really means is that they've reached their end of life and they're going to be removed in 4.0. Because of semantic versioning, we can't remove things prior to that because it'd be a breaking change. Then we also have some new APIs that are enabling some of the new features in Superset and enabling some of those deprecations that we mentioned as well. And these ones are feature flags that are going to be removed soon. These are marked as deprecated. So if you are using and configuring any of these flags, you probably won't need to going forward. You can ask about any individual ones if you need to in the questions. These ones have been removed because they were previously deprecated or simply unnecessary. So they're out in 3.0. And these ones are features that have essentially stabilized. So they've been moved from false in some experimental state to being true. The feature is on by default, but if you wish to turn it off in your deployment, you are still able to. These are new feature flags, which are new features, essentially. So we'll get into those in a minute. Actually, two of them were just from configuration, but they were Booleans, so we call them feature flags now. One of the biggest changes that people have asked about forever is the filter box in dashboards. Where is that going? What's the future of it? And it is officially now deprecated. So we highly, highly recommend that you migrate your dashboards to using the dashboard native filters feature, which is the left sidebar you have in your dashboard tool. And now, thanks to the kind folks at Airbnb, we've got a migration tool. I don't know if you want to mention anything specific about this, John, but you're welcome to butt in if you'd like. But there's a CLI tool that will change all of your filter boxes automatically into native filters. And on 4.0, we're going to basically force that migration, converting everyone's dashboards for you. But now you can do it at your leisure. Let me know if I missed anything key, John.
I know that sounds good.
All right. Then chart updates. And Michael, feel free to elaborate here if you'd like, but there are some of these legacy charts which use the old APIs, the old charting libraries, and they have been migrated to their newer, generally eCharts based components with certain exceptions. So when you upgrade to 3.0, some of your legacy charts will be ported, all the relevant controls will be ported, and everything should just work. We've also marked as deprecated the legacy bar chart, which uses the NBD3 library, so we'll kill that thing off eventually. And we deleted this preset chart XY thing, which was not even being used by Superset, so that's just a cleanup effort. And also, I should note that, you know, if you're importing older dashboards into a 3.0 instance, those will be updated upon import. Okay, another security thing. I don't know if Michael or Danielle, either of you would like to speak more to this, but essentially we're shipping CSP enabled by default. So if you have particular CSP configuration needs, you'll want to do that before shipping your deployment. There's just a few other deprecations. If anybody's using these legacy short URLs, they're not going to work anymore. If you're a plugin developer, then there are a couple of technical details that will just change how you write your code. So just something to be aware of. Now we'll get into fixes, kind of, but not really, because there's way too many of them, and they're all too granular, and they're all just kind of hard to talk about quickly. But there's more than 300 of them, and they fall into these general categories. We're trying to speed things up. We're trying to make things smoother, more clean, more consistent, support more databases, support more features for those databases, just generally kind of build towards stability. So I think 3.0 is a major leap in that department. And there's the link to the full changelog, which I will go ahead and drop in the chat in case anyone wants to just kind of comb through those fixes and see if there's anything that jumps out of them. Okay, features. This is probably what you're really here for. So let's get into this stuff. I didn't know how to order these. There's some small ones, there's some big ones. So I don't know if I wanted to start with the good stuff or end with the good stuff. So I just went semi-random. So I wanted to start off by talking about documentation. I think documentation is a feature, and we're trying to keep up with all of the changes that are happening in the code base, and we need your help. So we added this this little feature called bug herd, where if you're looking at the docs, you can click the button in the bottom right, and you can point at something on the page and either make a request or make you know, kind of editorial suggestions, things like that. So come on in. You can also join us in the documentation working group or channel on Slack if you want to get involved more deeply in contributing. We've got a few other dashboard filter improvements. I won't read the slide, but you can configure a lot more in terms of how you set up your filters. We have a lot more support at various levels through the code base for time grain support at the database level, as well as the UI level and filters. Yeah, it's just the mechanics of these things are constantly improving. We're adding small little features to make the filters more viable. I don't know what the right word is. Catalog support. So a lot of databases support catalogs, and we're trying to support that in additional databases. So these 4 made the cut for 3.0, and I suspect we'll be hearing more about that going forward. SSH tunneling is now configurable in terms of timeout, and as well as it gets imported and exported with databases. So you can migrate that around from instance to instance if you need to. Python has been upgraded to 3.9, and I don't know why those images are there. That's not relevant. I screwed up the slides. But in case I don't get to this later, we do have these new controls in cross filters, which I think is, oh man, I really screwed it up. Okay, there's cross filters. We can talk about that for a second. You now enable them via the filters bar on the left. And you can also see when cross filters are emitted in the filters bar on the left, and you can hit that little X button to get rid of them. Let's skip that for a second and go right into cross filters. We've added cross filters to the contextual menu, which you also use for drilling features, some of which are new in 3.0. And we've supported additional charts like the force graph, which you can barely see there with this unloadable video, and the world map, as you saw on the prior slide. Now, we've also upgraded cross filters indicators on dashboards. So you can see which chart is emitting them with a new icon that's easier to spot and understand. And you can also see the applied cross filters on any particular chart very easily, so you know what's affecting the viz you're looking at. Now let me back up to that slide I skipped earlier. Tagging system. Now throughout Superset, you're able to use tags if you turn this feature flag on to annotate your charts, dashboards, and queries with little tags of your creation, so you could better curate and organize your content. A lot of people have been asking for tags and or folders. We went with tags since we believe it's a little more versatile. So take advantage. Let's see. Okay, back in order. The row level security page is one of many pages that are in the process of working their way into React single page app that Superset is becoming. So that's the latest one to migrate away from a Python generated Flask template into a React, front end native application. So there's more of those coming. SQL Lab is in process right now. That's very exciting. It improves performance and all sorts of things. Translations have been a hotbed of activity lately. This is another great place to get started if you happen to use Superset and speak or read a foreign language. This is an easy place to contribute and fill in some gaps, but we've seen numerous languages added. Also, in support of releases in general, we're adding telemetry. A company called Scarf has been kind enough to let us leverage their technology to capture anonymized and aggregated data about usage. And the documentations have full opt-out instructions if you'd like to do that. We want to be transparent about this existing and how to turn it off just in case, but no PII is captured. What we're really after with this is trying to figure out who's using what version in the wild. So if we see a bug or a security concern, we can know what versions do we need to patch? How far back in history do we need to care about this problem? How many people have adopted 3.0 at this point? These things are really important in developing the software. So if you can use it, it helps us. Another big feature request, currency support and number locale. The world's full of fun number games. Now we support those in a couple of different ways we'll get into here. One of which is you can set the locale or the formatting of your number formats, or you can set the currency in your config.py file. So if you're running your deployment, you can just tweak that and use those D3 formatters and set it however you'd like for whatever your local currency and number format is. Also, again, the video's not behaving today. But what you can also do now is go to the dataset editor or the Superset semantic layer, and you'll see new inputs for D3 format for any individual metric, where you can add a currency. You could pick the symbol and whether it's a prefix or a suffix, and you can add a number formatter there. So you can do this on a per column basis. And most of what we call the tier 1 charts are supporting this. So you can, have one column of euros, one column of dollars, or whatever you want to do. Conditional coloring in big number charts. So if you wanted to do something that's sort of like an end-on chart where, if this number goes over a certain threshold, it turns red, now you can. Enjoy. Another video that isn't working, but what these all and inverse legend selectors mean to describe it is if you're using one of the E-charts, like say a pie chart, and you click on one of the items in the legend, it will, I'm trying to remember if by default it selects or deselects that particular item in the chart. But in any case, you can hit inverse to invert that selection, or you can hit all to select every series in that chart. Come on, slides. Let me make sure I didn't skip one. Okay. All right. Every once in a while, we get a new country added to the country map plugin. This time we've got Sri Lanka, so thank you for contributing that. If anybody else sees any gaps, please feel free to continue filling these. It's another great way to add a somewhat easy, not trivial, but relatively easy first useful commit that other folks can leverage. And then drill by. Oh boy, another, I don't know why the videos are not behaving today. But what this does to describe it is, somebody says there's a pop-up. No, I don't think so. That's a GitHub thing. But drill by lets you take all of the tier 1 charts, and if you were to right-click them, you can, actually, I've got a blog post here. Let me just show you. It does this, where you can right-click on, say, a wedge of a pie chart, click drill by, and then you get access to all of the underlying columns. It pops open a modal. This is a mixed chart, so you actually see 2 different tabs here, and you can see all the next level of granularity. It basically does a group by on your selected column and a filter for whatever, like in this case, wedge of a pie chart you clicked. So you, instead of having what people usually call drill down, we now have drill by, which we think is a lot more flexible. So I'll drop that blog post in the chat there and press on. Okay. Stream graphs. These have been added to the eCharts. I always want to say time series, but they do more than time series now. So we're just calling them series charts. Your x-axis can now be categorical. So whatever your series is, you can now view not just bar and line and area, but also stream charts with various forms of line interpolation. And then we've got a new DecGL layer, which is a heat map. A lot of folks have been asking for that, so dig in. We've also got a couple of more of these that are pending merge, so you can expect more fun DecGL stuff coming soon. And we've got the ability to sort the x-axis for all series charts. So if you happen to have categorical access or numeric access or any other type of access, you can now have improved controls over that. And you can also sort the stacking order of, somebody can't see the link I shared. Is that the blog you're referring to? Let me know and I'll try to fix it. Things were sorted by the series when stacked in bar charts, line charts, etc. were previously sorted by name, but now you have full control over how you stack things. Yes, no link. Okay. Let me just, oh, it's because I didn't share it to everyone. Thank you for pointing that out. There's the drill by. Yeah, and if one of the panelists could share the link to the Q&A for anybody who joined a little later, that would be helpful. Okay.
I did already.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Then, yeah, so now another thing you can do in dashboards is export your full chart data as a CSV. But this comes with a word of caution, thus the feature flag, which is that if you have a gargantuan number of rows, both your browser and your database are going to have a bad time. So use with caution. There's the ability when building a dashboard also to narrow the number of charts you have to pick from to simply show your own rather than everybody's, which makes a big difference if you have a hugely populated superset instance. So now it switches to showing your own charts by default, just FYI. This is a surprisingly fun one that's been answering a lot of questions on Slack, where people have always been asking, how do they do random things in table, like include product photos or brand icons or whatever, all sorts of different stuff. But now table cells support basic HTML and a little bit of CSS support. So you can have some fun with this. I've got an example here where I just made a box with randomly generated colors via a goofy SQL query, but you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Then we've got a couple of new databases that were supported. So thanks to all the folks who have put in those PRs to support StarRocks and Oscient in Superset. All right, I think I got through it in time. That's the main list of highlight features. So thanks for your patience. Panelists, did I miss anything you wanted to talk about or add any detail to?
I think it's great.
Okay, then let's talk about what's coming up next. There's a lot of stuff. Part of it is how to upgrade to 3.0. These are just some kind of bits of advice, you might say, on how to upgrade. There are, of course, instructions on how to upgrade from any version of Superset to any version of Superset on the documentation page. But usually after a release, we get a bunch of questions on GitHub and Slack and Stack Overflow and wherever else about some problem upgrading. So these are some of the things you'll want to do just to be safe and be diligent. Some of these we should probably move to the documentation, honestly, but yeah, your mileage may vary on how that all goes, depending on how you've deployed it and all sorts of different variables. There's too many variables to provide a perfect set of instructions on. Here are the exact steps you copy paste and it'll just work. I wish it was that easy. But of course, a couple of us happen to work for Preset. So if anyone's having trouble deploying it and would rather not have that problem, we've got an option for you. Happy to talk about that if anyone's into that. Then, next versions, right now, the third release candidate, thank you to Michael, by the way, for being the release manager on 3.0. That's a huge job. RC3 was just downvoted on the official Apache emailing list, but it's still available for testing. So don't devalue it because it was downvoted. Right now, that's the release candidate. It's the latest and greatest. So if you're able to run that and test that and look for any little bugs with databases or features or whatever you care about, let us know what those bugs are so that the forthcoming release candidate number 4 can include fixes for all of those things, because we don't want to keep releasing release candidate after candidate after candidate. So please test the last version. Let us know what needs fixing. If you want to get involved in the voting and testing, please just click, or actually, let me copy paste that. Oops, I can't click it. Anyway, send an email to this email address you see here, and you will be subscribed to the Apache Dev emailing list where you can get involved with that voting and release process. I didn't go too deep on process earlier, but part of this release is enabling faster, not just major, but also minor and patch releases. So some of us in the PMC and including John and Michael from Airbnb are going to be working pretty actively to release patch releases much more often. So keep an eye on that, and we'll try to continue to stabilize things as quickly as we can. And as far as these breaking changes go that you're seeing in 3.0, we are starting to plan ahead for 4.0. We don't want this to take another year to come out like 3.0 did after 2.0. So we're going to try to start to kickstart this process as soon as 3.0.0 finally hits the streets. And we expect that, by the way, to probably happen in a couple of weeks. Voting takes a while, but if release candidate 4 has all the fixes in it that we need, then it'll come out pretty soon. And with that 3.0 release, it's worth mentioning that Superset 2.x will remain supported for patch releases. It's the LTS version going forward until we release either 3.1.0, the next minor release, or 4.0, the next major release. Another way of saying that, I guess, is we support the most recent major and minor. So we're kind of supporting 2 releases at any given time. And then if you want to learn or get involved even more, we've got a blog coming soon that'll have all of the 3.0 release notes once it actually does ship, so we can include any final fixes. We've got a Superset town hall coming tomorrow. So if you want to discuss this or talk about getting involved in 4.0 or anything future looking, feel free to join us. It's on the Superset community calendar, which you can see on the Superset website under the resources page. You can join us on Slack. I pasted that link a couple of times. We can do it again. But there are 2 main channels for releases. One, the first one, Apache releases, is to kind of observe what releases are coming out. or give feedback on them. And the operational model release strategy is a place where you can get involved if you want to actually talk about like, hey, can I provide a fix for that? Or I can't upgrade without a fix for this. And then, of course, one of the best things you can do for any open source project is tell the world that you use it. So if you don't mind, by all means, add yourself and your org to the in the wild page on the repo where it lists a bunch of companies that are using Superset. That really helps kind of, boost our street cred and get the word out. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's the release that's going to be landing soon. Thank you all for your patience as I ramble. I'm assuming we probably have a lot of questions about the little features and changes. I'll turn it over to my co-hosts here to let me know if any interesting questions have transpired, and feel free to ask anyone. Have we seen anything on the Slido?
There's been a few little questions, but yeah, if you'll have questions, and feel free to vote them up as well, so we can kind of prioritize which questions we answer.
Michael, you're muted, by the way. If you're...
Yeah, I'm just sharing. You can go ahead, John. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. John, did
Okay.
you something we missed?
Oh, I'm sorry, apologies. No, I just said there are a few questions. I've answered some as well, but if people have questions, feel free to ask them and also upvote them as well, so we can prioritize which questions we answer.
Okay.
I think the first one is really important, the upgrade path from 1.3 to 3.0. Maybe we can just, I think we can share this slide right here, because it's pretty much the same steps from like any version from 2.0 to 3.0 or from 1.5 to 3.0. So it's pretty much like, that's what we did at Airbnb. I can even share, we have like a spreadsheet here, like a detailed spreadsheet that we did. So we look into all the proposals for 3.0, and then we had like all action items that we need to do to complete the migration. So pretty much we follow the same process here, like backup your databases, carefully read, changelog, and updating MD. These are really important because we have like a lot of breaking changes in 3.0, so those files are essential. The other thing is like adjust your feature flags and configurations, because we had many like default values that changed and some feature flags were removed, others were added. So you need to check them and adjust your deployment. Check your CSP policy. So now Superset by default has a CSP policy enabled. So if you handle that using a third-party software, you may want to disable CSP in Superset, or you may want to extend its configuration. So check that as well. Execute the migrations. That are 39, if I'm not mistaken, 39 migrations. So that's why it's important, like to back up your databases once you execute the migrations. And then, for example, we have third-party apps interacting with Superset. So it's really important that you check all the endpoint changes and make sure that your third-party apps still work. I think that's the main steps. Let me go back to the question.
Yeah, I think part of the question was because they're upgrading from a somewhat old version. They were at 1.3, I think. So does anybody on the call have a sense of whether it's preferable to kind of do incremental upgrades, or can you just make the big leap?
I think it's incremental is the best step, the best path forward.
Okay, cool. There are a couple of questions coming in. Oh, by the way, if anyone wants, you can vote these questions up or down. If the list gets long, please make them float to the top. So when do we expect to have 3.0 stable? Right now, we're thinking it's fairly stable, honestly. Being the fourth release candidate coming out soon, it's got a whole bunch of fixes that people have been finding in the prior release candidates, which is why we iterate. But also it includes all of the changes that are part of the 2.1.1 release, which is, the most recent and stable patch release. It's, 2 days fresh. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think all of those fixes, or at least all of the most important ones, are in 3.0. So we should be pretty good from both the security and a stability standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention as well that because we are increasing the patch releases, so if we have some bugs or minor bugs in 3.0.0, they will be fixed like pretty soon in 3.0.1, like in 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. So at this point, we're trying to fix like the really ugly ones. But I think like RC4, maybe RC5, but I think RC4 should be sufficient. So pretty soon, maybe next week or in the next 2 weeks, we have stable release.
Cool. I found out why my videos didn't work. Google randomly logged me out in the middle of the presentation. So I was operating in offline mode or something weird. Okay, so there was a question about the currency formatters and can it be done by chart instead of by config? So somewhere in the middle, you can do it at the data set level and the charts will respect that. So you can set a default currency, say US dollars for the entire deployment, but then if you have a data set that involves a bunch of euros or yen or whatever, then you can set that at the data set level and the charts will reflect it properly, or at least the majority of charts. If a chart you need doesn't support it, file an issue. We'll work on it. Let's see. What are the biggest user-facing features? I hope we covered that in the slides, but if there's something you're specifically wondering about that might not have been included there, let us know. But I think probably some of the bigger ones are, the drill by feature. I didn't spend that long looking at it because we've already covered it in prior meetups and blog posts and so forth, but that's definitely worth investigating. As well as, the continual shift toward e-charts and more stable charts.
Evan, can you answer this one? I think like cross filters cover this one, right?
Yes, we don't have the brushing capability specifically. That would be cool. The closest thing we've got to the brushing thing is in the series charts. You can configure, I forget what it's called, but there's a little scrubber bar that goes underneath it. You can kind of set the range and move that around to affect that particular chart, but that doesn't, I don't think, emit a cross filter. But we do have the cross filters feature in general, which if you enable it via the filters bar on the left side of your dash, it will allow you to click a single bar on a bar chart and filter by that series, or click a cell in a table chart and right click. And you can, well, certain charts you can click, like you can click a bar. Certain things like a table, you have to, I believe, right click and emit the cross filter via the contextual menu that pops up. But yeah, all of the tier 1 charts now support cross filtering, pie charts, line charts, et cetera, et cetera. So you can emit those and most charts receive them. I believe more charts receive cross filters than emit them, for the record. So it's pretty well supported in your dashboard.
Daniel, maybe Daniel, can you talk about a little bit about these CVs in 3.0?
Oh, yes. So every non-CV is already fixed on the range of the versions where they are. So those are already fixed on 2.10 on the link.
And all the fixes that are in 2.1.1, they are in 3.0 as well. And
Exactly.
3.0 has others as well.
Yeah.
All right, I'll answer the one about the interactive plugin gallery library thing. Yeah, this is a bit of a dream that I've had for a while, and I think others share this, where the plugin architecture a few years back was pretty weird. That's why one of the deprecations we covered in the slides was this viz.py thing that used to do some processing of the data for different plugins, and then we moved it at least to the point where viz plugins are just a single payload of JavaScript. Essentially, they don't require Python. So we're making strides toward that, but one thing we still need to do is make them dynamically loadable. So you can just put in a URL to like a Webpack remote module or something like that and load up a chart into your dashboard dynamically, like the way you'd install a plugin for your IDE or something like that. So we're still working on that. It's an architectural problem that needs some solving. Then it also becomes a developer experience problem where our plugin dev kit needs to be updated, which there is, by the way. If anybody wants information on how to develop plugins in the current world and use our little plugin generator, I can show you that. But yeah, we're not quite to the marketplace level yet, but we hope to get there with maybe optimistically a 4.0 architectural change. The aggregate map one is interesting too. Somebody's asking, is there an aggregate map where you could show billions of points? This is not an easy problem. And heck yeah, I want it. A lot of people want it. There are at least 2 people that are working on this problem that I can think of in the community, using different platforms. Some of these platforms charge quite a bit of money for the packages that power those. Some don't. So mixed bag. It's a bit of an open source question because we can't fully endorse something that costs a ton of money every month as an open source project. But there are some alternatives. Basically, we're looking into it. We've got a couple potential paths, and trust me, when that happens, we'll be shouting it from the mountaintops. Oh, for translations, yeah. Keep sending those to the master branch. Those translations are always useful for anybody that's just running off master. So the earlier, the better. And they're not breaking changes by any means. So it never hurts. And then by doing that, they'll make it not only into the next major release like the ones I was pointing out, but they could also make it into a minor release like 3.1 or 2.2 if that happens.
Yeah, Evan, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make a lot of them done as well. Do you want to go back to the top and make sure we've answered all those initial ones as well?
This one was these 2. Is latest RC release stable for everyday use?
Stable as we can make it, I guess, is the short answer there. If test it, and if you find anything unstable, let us know immediately so we can fix it in the next release candidate.
Yeah, I definitely don't recommend use them for production environments or anything like that. Generally wait for an official release, but it's great if you can help us test and make it more stable.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess it depends on what you consider everyday use. If you're just, using it locally or something, go for it. But if you've got a business depending on it, that you might want to let it bake a minute and actually land.
Oh, folders on dashboards page. I think we have a sip about this, right?
Oh, you mean for organizing dashboards, I presume? Kind of a content organization thing? Yeah, I think there is a SIP floating around about that, but for right now, the best feature that you can use that landed in 3.0 is the tags feature. So if you turn on that feature flag for, I think it's tagging _ system, then you can go to the top right menu in the UI and you'll see a little item that says tags. And when you go in there, you'll get a whole UI to filter your content, whether it's dashboards or charts or saved queries by the tags you've created. And for something like a dashboard, you would go to the dashboard properties and you can apply or create any number of tags to append to that dashboard and organize them in that other view. Hopefully that ramble made sense, but tags work. Try them out. Oh, there's a question about preset moving to 3.0. I can answer that one. So preset, when we do releases, we don't use the Apache official releases. We actually have a team that constantly is either cutting or pulling in changes from the master branch on Superset, and we have our own whole kind of additional layer of QA and testing that goes into each of our releases. And we release far, far, far more often than these official Apache releases come out. So all of the things that are in 3.0 have already been out on preset, some of them for quite a long while. So we tend to kind of stay toward the bleeding edge more than the official releases. So hopefully that answers that. But if anyone has other questions about preset, you can hit up the vendor preset channel on Slack or DM me or whatever. Handlebars question. Sorry, I skipped one, but yeah, I just saw it jumped out at me. Handlebars is not likely to support JavaScript. In fact, probably anything in Superset going forward is less than likely to support arbitrary JavaScript input, because that comes with a boatload of security concerns that we would just rather not have, XSS related things. So probably not. But also there's a lot of improvements to make to the handlebars plugin, which I think is one of the coolest things to come along in a long time. So we want to stabilize that. And I still hope to provide a bunch of examples in the blog post once we work out a couple of little kinks. Yeah, some people rely on past features that have been deprecated and they built on top of. Is there a reason so much is being deprecated in a single release? Yeah, a lot of it is just paying down old tech debt. Some of this stuff has been coming for a long time. If you have any particular features that you've built on top of that you rely on, then I guess there are a few options. One would be to, not upgrade. That's one option, obviously, but the better options, I think, would be either to adjust your fork to kind of rekindle some of that foundational technology that might have been removed, or it would be possible to open up a PR or even an improvement proposal as a GitHub issue and say, hey, I rely on this functionality. It was removed. I need this part of it back for this reason, and make a case for it. And if there is something that was removed and shouldn't be removed, maybe we can find a better way to support it and maintain it. So it's most of the stuff we deprecated was deemed kind of unmaintainable. So that's the main reason, is kind of cleaning house, trying to speed up the developer experience, trying to make it easier to code and test this application. So there's going to be more chopping. That's going to happen with every major version. But if anything died that you're particularly worried about, let's talk.
One important thing here as well is all this process and all things that were deprecated, we gather consensus first, right? So we submitted like an email to the dev list with the proposals, and then if everyone had the opportunity to object on each proposal. So that will happen. The same thing will happen for 4.0. We'll like deprecate, suggest, or propose more deprecations for 4.0, and then you can vote or request that a specific feature is not removed. In fact, I think we removed some of the original list, right? Like that people, we can't remove that part of the code or that specific API for that reason, and we agree. So I think it was like consensus.
Yep. Being an Apache project, everything that involves consensus is on the dev mailing list. So join that list. Somebody can send the coordinates if needed, but if you want to be involved in those consensus making decisions, that's where you want to be. Skipping ahead a bit, there's an interesting one I kind of want to tackle, which is why was drill by chosen over drill down? A couple of reasons. One is that to do drill down the way most people think of it, like click a bar that says country and then you get the bars with states, click the state, click the cities. That requires explicit hierarchy that you'd have to set up in your semantic layer or somewhere, and that requires labor. That is a lot of setup for a lot of people. And so what drill by does is it allows you not just to do exactly that, like you can click the bar that says country and click state and boom, you've got it. But you can also click country and select manufacturer and drill a different direction. So you have much greater flexibility in how you drill into your data, as well as providing that fundamental drill by functionality. Now, that's not to say we can't also add or sorry, drill down. That's not to say we can't also add drill down in the future where there is an explicit hierarchy and have the best of both worlds. But the drill by thing provided not only the flexibility, but a good foundation to build upon. Let's see. Does anybody have an answer to the one about migration steps? I mean, I think we kind of covered that in the earlier slide. I think basically follow the instructions on the documentation site with those bullet points of things to kind of watch out for. But you know, do it in a test bed environment to sandbox if you're able to. That would be the wise move.
Yeah, I think we can also add that, like, use the Slack channels, right? Because we have like a lot of Slack channels, like people help each other during the migration process. And then we have like a lot of different environments, like installation environments. Someone is using Docker, someone is using ARM, someone is using Helm, someone is using like PyPy releases. So the Slack channel is the best place to get help for your specific deployment type. So use the channels. That will be really valuable.
Yeah. Someone's asking about the filter charts, aka filter box, and will that be available in Superset 3? Yes, it is available, but this is the last major version that will have it. So 3.0 includes that migration script that you can run on the command line and migrate all of your filter box components to dashboard filters automatically. But in 4.0, we're going to force people's hands and run that migration for them, and that will be the end of the filter box. So if there's anything that the filter box does that is essential to your operation, then you know, let's talk about what needs to be added to the new dashboard filters to support your needs going into 4.0. More complex conditional formatting and charts. I mean, I think that's one of those things where to say what so many people say in open source, PR is welcome. There are some folks that are asking for things that are more specific, like instead of doing gradient conditional formatting in tables, they want to see just, you know, the solid color, more like an end-on chart we were talking about earlier. But yeah, if you have needs, you can either open a ideas thread on GitHub and try to find some people that will help support this and commit the code if you're not a developer yourself. Or if you are a developer, then join us in the contributing channel on Slack and let's talk about these features, and maybe we can help steer you along. But I don't think it's on Preset or Airbnb's roadmap, just speaking for the people that are here on this call today.
I can take the next one. Are we planning any kind of option to clean up the metadata? Yes. Like for 4.0, we already have like one tab specifically to remove old tables or broken relations from the metadata database. And we have a lot more coming in the next major release. If you search for Superset 3.0 project in GitHub, on GitHub, you'll find like the project board and all the tasks that we are already planning to tackle in 4.0.
All right, somebody's asking about clicking on something like a button on a chart to trigger an API endpoint. No, that's not anybody's roadmap that I'm aware of right now. So it's a fine idea. I would say, again, GitHub discussions are where this kind of thing is a good spot to drop an idea and get a conversation going. You can do it on Slack too, but I think the ideas threads on GitHub discussions tend to get a little more traction over time. Okay, I swear we get this one every meetup, but when will the complete eCharts library be available? Never, because eCharts is like a framework to build custom visualizations. It's not like a set of charts. It gives you the capability to build most charts you could dream up, but it's not a set list of things. We're just going to go down and tick off the boxes and add some of their examples, like the cuts of beef chart is always the one I go to. We're not going to add a cuts of beef chart to Superset, but if there's something that you feel is lacking, like in terms of a feature from one of their mini bar chart examples, we can add that control to the bar chart in Superset and make it more flexible. So we can definitely add missing ones. We want to add a waterfall. We want to add a bunch of things, but you know, if there's one that you'd like to add, by all means, open a PR or start a discussion. If there's a feature lacking, a tweak you want to make, we can add controls. But no, there's not like a full list. We're just gonna churn through.
Yeah, there's always the option to use plugins as well, right? Like if there's a chart that you don't have access to, but you want, then you can create your plugin and use it.
Yeah, and we're also not limited to eCharts. You could use AntV or VX or whatever other, you know, whatever other JavaScript thing you want to use in theory. Is there a logging process for security improvements? Like a limited amount of tries. Oh, you mean like fail to ban, that sort of thing, where like if you log in unsuccessfully 3 times, we ban you. I don't know of anything like that. Danielle, do you have
We
any?
have, yeah, we have rate limiting enabled, if I'm not mistaken, and also logging, but then you can.
Yep. So for plain authentication, for database authentication, we have the rate limiting that will apply to every type of login and every type of authentication itself. Besides that, integrating Superset with Active Directory or other identity providers will get you the ban with authentication failures, but simple database authentication will not for now.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes till the top of the hour, so I think I see a question I would like to end on. The rest of these will follow up and continue to answer on Slido, and we're going to leave this Slido open for a few days. So if you have questions that come up later, or if someone sees this on YouTube, hello people from the future, then please continue to ask questions here and we'll do our best to address them. But somebody was asking about the project roadmap, and they found a link to an old one that was a bit of an experiment. That experiment didn't really work out for reasons, but there's a lot of discussion around how we're going to kind of solidify a roadmap going forward. But if you want to get into that, I would suggest coming to this thing that's tomorrow. Everybody is welcome. Everybody is encouraged. It's the Superset Town Hall. And again, you can find the Superset community calendar that includes an event with the Zoom link for tomorrow morning. And this is where a lot of Superset folks just get together and talk about what they care about, what's coming up, what problems are we facing, how are we as a community going to address X, Y, and Z. So if you want to get involved in that conversation, that's great. If it doesn't fit your time zone, we can move it. We're very accommodating. We share out the notes for input and after the meeting, so everybody's aware of what we talk about on the Apache discussion list. But yeah, Town Hall is a great place to come and talk about roadmap stuff, and we are trying to formalize that process. So we will definitely keep you in the loop. We all want that. All right, top of the hour. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions. We'll do our best, but thanks for joining us and let us know what you think of 3.0. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks co-hosts John, Danielle, Michael, thank you. Bye everybody.